Hey everyone, how's it going? So I'm doing a live Q&A hosting myself with X-Man. So yeah, how are you doing, X-Man? It's been some time since we last talked.
I'm doing pretty good. Um,
That's good, right? I had a good holidays. Well, I mean the holidays are still coming, but the Thanksgiving and everything. I thought was it pretty good or
it was okay. You could have, I spent most of that day working, so I didn't get much of a chance to enjoy it.
yeah, sure, yeah. We actually have one question already. So how much are we really fighting the critical theorists and our parents and ally?
That's an interesting. How much are we fighting?
Yeah,
So could you reframe that? I'm trying to
yeah,
process
sure.
what that
Yeah.
question is.
Don Sexton's the one that's asking the question here, and
I
so
think I
how
just
much are
thought
we
about this.
really fighting the critical theorists? Let's start with that one for now.
The critical theorists, as in like the feminists or
I
the
suppose so. Yeah, right.
um, I think we're fighting. So I can't speak for other people per se.
Mm-hmm.
I would just say that I think I would try to fight them through philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
their ideology, and I think the way I handle the best way to fight against a bad idea is with a good idea.
Of course.
To not just criticize them, but come up with an actual better, meaningful solution, and to act on that solution. You know,
Right. That reminds me of something I heard. The uh, the best way to fight bad speech is more speech.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
You fight misinformation with accurate information.
exactly. Right.
Not
Yeah,
censorship, right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, so what are some things you've learned during your time with NCFM?
Well, I've learned that legality, focusing on the legality of men's issues isn't as simple as just joining up and saying, "Hey, I want this changed," and then calling somebody on the phone. It's a long process. You have to know exactly what you want. You have to be able to uh, write it. You have to be able to paraphrase it correctly. You have to talk to people. You may have to find other people or other groups of people, legal groups who agree with you.
Mhm.
And then there's a whole thing about there's a whole thing about politics involved. So you have to end up thinking of from a political spectrum would who will and will not be an ally for you. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I'm seeing some attendees in our Q&A here. Welcome to each and every one of you. All your questions matter. Thank you guys for just being here and just I hope you enjoyed the interview Chris and I did with X-Man before. It was a great one. I really enjoyed it for sure. And I'm pretty sure we can come up with some more questions to ask X-Man because he's got some awesome ideas. And please ask them in the Q&A tab under Zoom or in Whova, please. All right, so let's see here. What advice you would give newer, more inexperienced MRAs? Say one's kind of joining in like this week or so.
um, the best advice I could give them is to put a lot of your energy
Mhm.
in either if you have an issue with men's, if you're passionate about a men's issues like father's issues or uh, things related to false allegations, I would tell them to immediately focus on the legality. Find a legal organization if you can, join it. You got to be the change that you want
Mhm.
to represent. You can't. Anyone can complain about a scenario and say a scenario is wrong, but you also might have to try to be the person to fix it or join an organization that fixes it. That that usually helps.
Right. Now, should people start from those organizations or should the organizations find you?
Um, well, I think it's difficult for an organization to find a specific person. Especially one that's not busy. Somebody who's already popular most likely is already busy doing something else. So I would ask them to try to reach out or to see if they can find one.
Yeah, that makes sense. What is a current event that you've been paying particular interest recently as far as the men's issues go? Like, what's some current event that you've been catching your eye on? say in Hollywood or just politics or something to that? Yeah.
Well, a current event I think it caught my attention was that there was a suicide awareness event that happened in Chicago just a month or two ago, and we had planned and to go there and wear like shirts, basically acknowledging how men go through suicide and mental health, and how they don't have a big enough, they don't have a supporting society that allows them to speak up and to talk about their emotions and to talk to people who actually care about them. Um, it actually did. It worked. It actually went fine. I assumed it would have been like a protest, but it actually went a lot fine. We just casually talked to other people about it, and they kind of agreed. So that was a really big event that stuck in my mind.
What other websites do you actually have besides Humanity?
Well, the other websites aren't really men's related. They're just
Well, still,
okay. Okay, we'll have one that's based off of media, mostly where I do topics related to sports and movies and and any trauma going on in Hollywood. And I have another one that's based off politics, political news, and
okay,
political news updates. Yeah.
right. Yeah, but well, I mean, I think it's still a relevant thing because as men, we like to do all kinds of projects, and yeah, and explore all sorts of interests.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Do you think there is a kind of attitude that men shouldn't really enjoy themselves, say coming from feminists and stuff like that?
That men shouldn't enjoy themselves in what way?
In what way? Well, as they see fit, and just like in like not in service of womankind or for any reason that they can think of.
I think women have an issue with men enjoying themselves if it doesn't include them,
Hmm.
or uh, if it puts them in a predicament that they would have to self-reflect in. What I'm saying is from right now, what I'm seeing in sports is that it doesn't look like women actually care about, uh, don't really have an interest in basketball.
Hmm.
But because there's a WNBA, and a lot of women don't even watch the WNBA, therefore putting it in the financial issues struggles they're having right now. And then with football, I think there's like multiple examples where men have to like wear like breast cancer awareness. Why would men be watching a breast cancer awareness like sport? That doesn't even make sense. It's just like women putting their and inciting their attention to areas where men enjoy themselves.
Right. Yeah. So, what are some health issues that should be paid attention to that you think just aren't?
A big one would always be prostate cancer, right?
Okay.
That's a and I think that's like I said, that is something that can easily and simply be fixed, like the simple act of a blue ribbon,
Mhm.
because we have pink ribbons for
Yeah.
breast cancer. You can always just have like a blue ribbon for prostate cancer. That would fix a lot of the the problems and get people to raise awareness. I actually had the Ncfm create some blue ribbons, and I kind of passed them out at like my job, and people would put it on their uniforms. So
Okay.
uh,
Now, what does a day in CFM kind of look like for you? To what extent do you interact with all the members? Is it more in person? I mean, I don't know if you've been able to do it in person since in recent lockdown times, but I don't know what have things been like there?
yeah, it was every Sunday, every week. It was originally in person, but like I said, once the pandemic scenario happened, we were forced to shut down in the location we were going to. So now we just do it over Zoom, over like Zoom calls like this. Like all
Mhm.
the members will just go to one Zoom, and we'll talk about what progress we made, what is our future goals, what are our plans, how do we plan to get there, you know,
Right.
topics related like that.
Sure. Do you work with other organizations?
I planned on working with the National Parents Organization in the future because I feel like they're trying to get shared parenting bills passed. in Illinois and in other states. And so I was thinking that either, I could go work with the National Parents Organization, or they could try to, communicate with the Ncfm. We can both try to pass the law. I think it's
Yeah.
two organizations would be better than one.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah. Are they pretty? Do you think they'll be pretty receptive to that?
That's what I'm not sure about, because I don't know like what their all of their views are, other than their views on parenting. I don't know what their views are on other men's issues, and if their views are off-putting on other men's issues, then they may not be receptive to us.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's one thing I'm just kind of, we're always not so sure because, they might, work with us at first, but then discover more about, if I were Ncfm, for instance, like
Yeah.
they would discover what we were about and then would kind of flake out on us or say,
Yeah.
yeah, right. So do you have any worries about that at all?
Well, yeah. What I tell people that the best thing to understand is that just because somebody agrees with you on one thing doesn't mean they agree with you on everything.
Mhm.
A lot of people don't care about. I know a lot of guys who don't even care much about men's sexual. Didn't care about men's male victims of sexual assault or female predation. They
Right.
didn't care about that at all, or they didn't care about men of domestic violence, male victims of domestic violence. But they were concerned about like fathers' issues because a lot of them are forced on these bogus child support payments that are way more than their income allows, or
Yeah.
they can't see their children. So they may be receptive to one thing but not the other, and
Yeah.
just got to be prepared. You just got to be prepared to know what audience you're talking to.
Exactly. So that's where I guess attempts at persuasion might be better, explored. I think it's
Yeah.
yeah, to be sure. Yep. Okay. So Dean Hedges asks, how can we join Black men issues and men's issues together? I think this is an important aspect.
Well, I hate to send people to my website because I did actually write a whole. That was like my most recent article, but um, what I tell people is that the thing about Black men is that you have to acknowledge. So the issue we're having right now is that there's a stark contrast between white men and Black men going on,
Okay.
because it seems like basically white men, if we live in a scenario in which white women use the feminism as like a tool to
Mhm.
get themselves out of like criticism from
Yeah.
racism. It's just
Right.
like because originally it looks like racism. A lot of white people were being criticized for racism, and it looks like white women use feminism to say that it was the white man's fault and throw all the blame to the man and say that and try to put themselves in the same category as like racial minorities as far as oppression goes, which is
Right.
it's as silly as it sounds. Um,
Uh,
and it looks like so a lot of white men already feel victimized and feel like they feel like they're by themselves, and that they feel like it's them versus women and racial minorities. And meanwhile, Black men have a sort of opposite scenario. It feels like Black men, they feel like Black women kind of abandon them in favor of the feminist movement, because despite the feminist racist history, a lot of Black women still continue to join feminist ideas and still promote feminist ideologies.
sure.
And
Well,
so
did you say that Black women are abandoning Black men for the feminists?
Black men feel that they've been abandoned by Black women,
Okay.
because like historically, when during the the suffrage, when they were trying to advocate for women's voting rights and
Hmm.
all that, um they were a lot of the leading suffragists were had flat out racist viewpoints on
Right.
Black people, and they even had Black women stand on the back of the lines when they were marching outside. So you would
Wow.
think that would be an off-put. Black women would just stop joining them, but they just kept choosing their femininity, I guess, over their humanity as Black people. I don't,
Yeah.
and it just seems like and every time a Black man is being portrayed as great or some type of high status inside of society, seems like Black women are usually the ones they usually throw Black women out to throw a curveball inside that and tank that Black man's legacy. And so
Yeah.
yeah, and so it just seems like a big issue going on, and it seems like Black men feel isolated, just like white men. Black men feel isolated, and so they try to speak. They have a sort of tribalistic nature where they feel like it's like Black men know that gender is a part of this issue, but it's like they feel like they can't acknowledge it. which is kind of weird, you know, in a society built on racism, they feel almost more comfortable talking about racism than they do men's issues. So
Exactly.
it's like they can talk about things like incarceration
Mm.
or false accusations of sexual assault or stuff, and but they would completely have to frame it as if it's purely a race issue and not a gender issue, which is not
Right.
accurate because if it was, it would affect Black women at the same rate. It doesn't,
Right.
so clearly gender is there. It's clearly a big issue.
Exactly. I mean, do you, it's not. I mean, I don't like tribalism myself, so I don't know if it's going to do them any good. But what are
Right.
your thoughts on
Yeah.
that? Is it going to lead to their doom, or is there something that could be?
That's my point. I think the issue is that men, not just Black men, but men in general, they have this issue where they notice that society isn't receptive to men's issues, so they always find alternative avenues to speak out. And you'll
Right.
see like comedians constantly try to use comedy as like their avenue to speak out about men's issues. They'll try to, do it under the guise of comedy,
Right.
or you'll see like writers try to do it inside of like slip once every woman will slip something in there in a TV show or in a film will casually slip something about fathers being screwed over. And so it looks like Black men are kind of doing that similar thing. Like they know there's probably no way they can generally say it and it'd be greatly receptive. So they try to use like the avenue of racism to try to like as a the shield so that they can't, so that it stops them from getting the negative reception from the media and from the general public.
Exactly. I mean, that kind of reminds me of a friend showed me a Bill Burr thing, in
Yeah,
which he's kind of just basically doing something like that, right? Just kind of
yeah,
cloaking the fact that uh, uh, you know, he's not trying to be full on, admitting that he's for men's issues, but he's trying to smuggle that in
yeah,
uh, with some kind of a routine, just by poking
right,
fun at something. So
right.
exactly, right. So when were you published in A Voice for Men?
It's been a year, like a few years, maybe like 2 years ago, because I didn't have my own website at that point, so I was just like casually submitting things for Voice for Men.
Okay,
Um, and then I start casually submitting things for like Medium, which is just basically just a platform anybody can make their own post anywhere.
sure, okay.
So,
Now,
um, yeah, and that's when later on I decided I should just create a website, maybe that.
yeah, okay. I'm not so I'm kind of dumb. I don't really know much about Medium. Is it just anyone can talk about anything?
Yeah, Medium is just really just it's just a place where anyone can just create an account and just start and just post anything, either as like a you can it's easier to it's more like a show don't tell type of thing. It's better to see it and understand what I'm getting at, but it's basically just anyone can type anything, post anything on their account, and you'll get views or something.
Yeah. Do you remember what you wrote about when you got published for A Voice for Men at first?
The first thing I wrote about, uh, I was trying to, I'm trying to memorize which one was the first one. I know I wrote something about how feminists, yeah, I got it. So it was the one. It was about the rising tide, as I called it. It's basically this philosophy called the rising tide lifts all boats. So it
Okay.
basically, so this is false assumption from feminists where if they address women's issues, then society will trickle down and then get to men's issues afterwards. Basically, they're saying like, well, if women are saying that women want power, but women don't have the responsibilities of men, so they're basically saying, yeah, well, if women get power, then somewhere society will change their views and trickle down to the responsibility part. But we see that's not the case. That we've seen women get more and more power, and that the responsibility part still haven't come. So it's clear that that's not. It hasn't been working.
Yeah, it seems like the goalpost is just moved the next spot and the next
Yeah,
spot and the next spot.
right. And
Hmm.
there's a study called Women Are Wonderful. There's a study that pretty much shows that the public opinions on men and women is that uh women do have contradictory opinions on like equality when it comes down to advantages that women have versus
Sure.
men. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So how's the Humanity blog doing in recent times?
It's doing great. I mean, at first when I first started it took a really long time for any to get any views or get any traction. So I started going everywhere to post. I went to start joining a bunch of men's groups on Facebook to post. I went to start joining a bunch of Reddit groups to post. I started recommending website to my fellow Ncfm members, and when I went to the ICMI 2019 ICMI, I recommended it to people there. Maybe you can read that. I just went on my way to recommend it, and every single time I created something, a new article or new news update, I immediately posted it every single page I can find.
Sure.
So now it's at a point where it's kind of afloat. I don't really have to post 24/7. It'll still get views, so I can calmly post. I don't have to like throw out all these posts every second.
Exactly. So you brought up ICMI 19. So what was your experience then? Was that your first one, or?
Yeah, that was my first one. It's actually crazy because that goes back to my introduction to the MRM kind of. My introduction to MRM was when I saw Hannah Wallen and Elizabeth Hobson. Those were the two who got me. Who, after I was listening to all their interviews and their speeches and reading their writing, it got me interested in men's issues. And I saw that they have an annual ICMI every year, but they were in so many different states or so many different countries that I can't go to. So they asked me that I want to go to this one, 2019. And I said, well, I can't because it's all around this different country. But they said it was in Chicago. I was like, oh, that's great. I live in Chicago. That's great. that's an incredible coincidence.
Okay. Right.
So,
right. And
yeah. Unfortunately, Elizabeth couldn't. She couldn't make it. We had to see her through. Like an interview like this. Right. And Allison Tiemann, I wanted to see her, but I didn't get a chance because she was stopped at the Canadian airport
right.
due to some issues.
Well, I've interviewed her on I think about Thursday. I think it is. It'll go live, and we'll do a live Q&A there too. So if you want to be there, throw a question. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would love to be that. The first time we never got a chance to actually talk like person to person. I think it was just that she. I remember the ICMI was on the verge of being shut down by a bunch of feminists.
Yeah.
And Allison was telling, and I was really upset about this because everything was planned out, and yet Allison was still trying to be calm about this, say that she doesn't want this. We shouldn't be angry. We shouldn't handle this with aggression. Just handle this calmly. And that just made me more angry. I'm like, no, I'm getting tired of this nonsense. I'm getting tired of them trying to shut everything down. And I just like ranted in the comments, and apparently she saw that, so she's still like, that's not a good first meeting, first impression.
Well, I wasn't there at the time because I wasn't part of the environment at the time, right. Whether I could have gone there or not. But yeah, what was that like to actually be there and be under threat of being shut down?
The threat of being shut down was that it's the idea. It's more like you try your best to reach this one goal, and you work hard to reach it, and then out of nowhere somebody tries to stop it. It's very frustrating. It gets you. It gets you like worked up, like like I've done all of this, and it's all about to just feel like nothing just happened.
So, and then the lockdowns hit. So wherever it was going to happen in the next year, it's not going to happen. So it became like this whole YouTube sort of deal. We were pretty disappointed that it wasn't going to be an in-person thing.
I mean, I guess, but I kind of expected that, seeing how due to the pandemic everything kept being locked down. I kind of was expected it at that point that the ICMI was going to be over. Yeah,
I see. Yeah. How did it affect your personal life and work, the lockdown?
Well, my job is it cares more about money, so so they definitely didn't really shut down for about like 1 or 2 days, and then after that everybody was just forced back to work. So
right, but so we did ICMI on YouTube last year. And this year we're doing it this way, and so I think we've been getting some good feedback from that one. They like the platform very much. It's very interactive, and we might do it this way again next year. I don't know. What are your thoughts on what we got so far?
I mean, as long as it goes by, as long as it goes smoothly,
Mhm.
the only side effect of the internet is that you never know anything can happen. There could be a power outage,
Right.
the internet can start messing up. Anything can happen. So there's there's that. But I guess as long as everything goes smoothly. I have stage fright anyway, so so me being interviewed in person would have already been a challenge. So
Hmm.
I
Right,
guess I
right. You're
guess
not
it's fine.
not really a presentation kind of guy, or
Yeah, I've always I've always been like the only time I've ever performed was like when I was in high school in theater class. Um,
okay.
it was around that time. But when I was younger, I just could not stand crowds. The idea of like talking or speaking, it was difficult. But but
Sure,
my
sure.
grade was on the line, so I guess I had to get over that.
Right. Yeah. So uh, in our early talks, you mentioned something about the real problems regarding gynocentrism and feminism. So, what are we ignoring here in the men's movement? What aren't we talking about so much that you can kind of perceive?
um, I think we're talking about it, but I don't think we're like I don't think it's like we've planned out a strategy to fix it.
Well,
Um,
sure, yeah,
but to be honest, is there really a strategy that is there really a way to plan for that? Or
yeah,
is it to plan an entire culture, fix an entire culture? That's yeah.
exactly. But for clarity for the audience, so what are those loose ends that we need to tie?
Well, like we don't. Well, currently we don't have a way because a lot of when a woman is in some type of like claim she's in some type of danger, whether or not a guy even knows the situation, whether or not a guy knows what's going on, a random guy will pop up to try to protect her. It's like you don't even know who she is. You don't even know if if she's the one causing the problem. You don't know you're just seeing you're
That
just seeing a woman angry. You just rush to defend her. Simple stuff like that it causes an issue, and stuff like that needs to be fixed. And there's also just guys, even on the guys anywhere, be it on the internet, guys on YouTube, they'll see a woman, they'll see women's groups being criticized, and they feel the need to step in and like defend them automatically without even knowing the full context of what's going on.
right. It's like a automatic, like a programming that happens
Yeah,
that you know, like it's been browbeaten into them all their life.
yeah,
It's you've got to rush in and basically ensure your own destruction, or
yeah,
else you're a pathetic loser.
yeah. Men's entire life is all been put on the idea of like, can they protect women, and have they had sex with a woman? That's pretty much the entire life, how their entire life has been built up to be valued, versus like, you know, do you have any goals in life? Have you achieved
Right,
those goals? Are you making basic money? Are you living, are you living comfortably without struggling? Like,
right. Okay, so Cole Palmer has a question. Thanks, X-Man. I enjoyed your interview. I have two questions. One, where does your inspiration come from to write your articles? Uh, I'll let's ask that one. And I'll get to number two right after.
um, the inspiration is more so that I'm already a writer anyway, so I'm always inspired to write something, and just the idea of like if I feel like something's not being talked about enough, and I'm trying to bring a recognition to it, trying to bring awareness to it. Um, I don't think female predation is covered enough in media. I saw there was a celebrity named Allison Mack. It's funny you've seen a lot of these male celebrities being Me Too. And
Yeah,
this female celebrity, Allison Mack, she pleaded guilty to being involved in a sex trafficking
yeah.
scenario that she,
I
and,
know
and it
exactly what
didn't
you're talking about.
it
Yeah,
didn't get all this it didn't get all this big media attention. It didn't get all these celebrities to coming out to denounce it. It just was like swept. It happened for like a few weeks and it was swept under the rug. Like nobody talked about it much anymore. Stuff like that needs to be needs to be addressed in media.
yeah.
Stuff like female teachers keep getting these female teachers almost every month. I keep seeing female teachers getting fired from school or getting into legal trouble because they keep having relationships with the younger with minor boys in their high schools. But
Right,
yeah.
right, right. So his number two question is, what advice would you give someone who is unsure about starting a blog about men's issues? Thank you, Carl.
Well, the only thing I could really say is that if you're not sure, you probably shouldn't do it because then if you're not passionate about about the thing that you're doing, you odds are the quality isn't going to be there. You know, it's best to wait till you're passionate about it and to do it. Yeah, I would love to be a guy and just like try to inspire you and say like, oh well, you should do it because this is going to help me. But like it's really it's really up to you how you want to handle that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of the same way, right? I mean, I just have a WordPress blog that's, it's basically free, right? It's got,
Right.
yeah, right. So I just write some stuff I wanted to, and some of the articles got traction, and all of a sudden, here I am co-hosting North American ICMI. So
You should link it to me too, while you're at it.
oh yeah, sure, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't mind some discussion on some of those. But yeah, it's like, if you're not sure, then do it, right?
And to an extent, you also you're gonna go through writer's block. I have that issue. I feel like when I first started the blog, I was posting something almost every 2 days. Over every 2 days, I would just type in this, that, then then out of nowhere, it just paused. I'm like, I don't have anything to say right now. I don't have anything to say anymore. I have to wait until I get inspired again or I find something.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I tried to do something, every weekend, right, at first.
Yeah.
But then, it's like, I don't have the time and energy because I got all kinds of peripheral stuff happening. So
Yeah.
once I come up with something, I'll make some posts,
Yeah, and I have like a bunch of drafts, like 90 drafts, things that I started and didn't finish. And like it's like I froze. What am I supposed to write? This is going to be a really, really short article if I don't add more to. There's that pressure of like make sure I add enough because I don't think an average person would like to click on an article and see a paragraph and say, okay, well, I guess that's it. Like,
yeah. Now to backtrack just a bit, just a bit. You mentioned something about men being judged about not having sex and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think of the paradox that this sort of thing happens? You must be a loser if you're not having sex, but at the same time, if a man looks for sex, then he's some kind of perverted predator and this evil person and this chauvinist and whatever kind of names you can come up with, so toxic masculine.
Well, that's just part of. Well, that's even. I'm happy you brought up the word of toxic masculinity because the funny thing about it is that they would say what a feminist or a person who says that men should speak up a lot more. They would say that men or toxic masculinity prevents men from trying to expressing their vulnerabilities. And that's funny. That's ironic because the same people there will mock you for claiming that you don't have sex, that you haven't had a woman,
right.
which therefore is a vulnerability that they're being mocked about. So,
right.
But like I said, it's just that weirdness of it. It kind of goes along with I would say a lot of female Twitch streamers or a lot of female public figures will like dress provocatively to get views, and then a lot of comments will be addressing their provocative, will be giving compliments about their cleavage or whatnot, and they'll get angry and like, well, stop commenting on their cleavage, focus on the topic. It's like, well, you were the cleavage to get me here in the first place. It makes sense that people are gonna comment on it.
Well, it's like we can parse out their priorities from this thing, right? Because it's like they're looking just to incriminate or call out men as if that's its own end point.
It's kind of like that. It's kind of like they're trying to put men in a predicament where they can't win, whereas like they're trying to have a way, or they're trying to have they're trying to have life built in their favors. Like they want the money and attention they'll get from an OnlyFans or from cleavage, but they don't want people to comment on it because they feel they don't want people to comment on they don't want to have to deal with the comments or they don't want to have to deal with the guys looking at them too much or the predation or guys trying to have sex with them 24/7, but they still want to utilize their sexual appeal for money and for viewership.
Yeah, I just had an epiphany. They want them to respect the women want the men to respect them for this, but they don't want them to enjoy it.
Right. Right. Yeah. Right. It's kind of like it's kind of like it's kind of like why the people who have only porn sex workers they'll constantly say they're very picky about which guys they have sex with. which is odd because it's like you're a sex.
Right.
They're picky about who, like the guys who aren't paying them, just ordinary guys that they beat on the street. They're very picky about that. It's like they're freaked out that so many guys have like these attractions to them and send them these mails talking about how good they look, and I'm like, well, I mean, you are. It does kind of make sense that people are going to have those natural human opinions.
Right. I mean, that's the market you're filling.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense that yeah, you can just tell them like, okay, I don't want to have sex with you and move on. But why have a whole like fit, a whole like be whole stressed or traumatized about it when
Right.
when like you're
Yeah.
doing this to get money in the first place? You know the deal that comes with it.
Exactly. Like, yeah, I mean, they want someone to come rescue them all the time from all these idiots that, or in their minds, all these idiots that they would accuse and, uh, be sure they're caught and admonished. So it's like a thorough system for breaking men so they can't win at all. Like you said, they can't win, Right.
Yeah, I think what I realized is that society is that in society, the reason they would pander, they can't pander, they can pander to the men, but I mean like the way they treat women, the way the government screws over fathers in court, and now they, and stuff like that. They couldn't do that the opposite way around. They couldn't do that to women because men wouldn't allow that. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So if they break down men and they break down all of men's like values as like protection or strength, they break those men down into their like a shell of their former selves, and they put women in this predicament where they're privileged. Men aren't gonna fight for what they believe in like they usually do, and the women are easy to be manipulated because of their emotion. They can play off women's emotion to try to manipulate them to do these things.
Exactly. Yeah. In the chat, got some feedback. The difference between a guy who is creepy or not depends on whether she is attracted to him or not. That's by Carl
Yeah,
Palmer. Yeah.
that's absolutely correct. If a guy who she's attracted to says she looks sexy or she looks hot, then of course she's gonna be happy about that compliment. If a guy she doesn't like and she looks sexy or she's like, oh, get away from me, you creep, right?
Exactly.
You,
Now, do you think those women are aware of that double standard, or is it something that they just kind of do without thinking?
it's hard to tell. I think I always say it's two things. There's ignorance, there's genuine ignorance, and then there's willful ignorance.
Mhm.
There's some people who don't know that or don't recognize it until you bring it up to them, and there's other people who recognize it, and when you bring it up to them, they'll deflect away from the situation or try to or get defensive because they're aware that they're messing up.
Yeah.
It's hard to know which is it more genuine or is it more willful? I struggle about that argument every day. So back then at one point I used to say it was just genuine ignorance, and if I kept explaining that to people, they would understand. But after a while of seeing so many women not addressing this basic reality of what I was talking about, I started saying, oh, okay, they're just being willfully ignorant. They clearly don't. Women know what's going on and they're intentionally doing this. But then I talk to other people and then I'm getting a new perspective. I battle that back and forth in my head every day.
Well, do you think we should treat women all like they know it and they're not stupid about it?
Right.
Do you think they will be held more accountable this way, or?
That's been genuinely my approach because I always tell people I feel like if by by not by not explaining it to them straightforward, I feel like that's kind of it's almost like you're disrespecting their intelligence. It's like you're saying that they're like they don't understand basic human behavior. you
Right.
know, it,
Exactly.
I would just say yeah the for the most part to just get to the point. Don't be too aggressive and and yell and you know slur and use slurs and all that. But I mean just like get to the point of what the problem is, cite the problem, cite the solution. So that there's no confusion.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it does kind of bring up the question about women in the workforce, namely in the office, right?
Mm.
So what do you think? Is there any particular good in like women kind of coming in and just participating in like an otherwise male office space, or do you think those spaces should have more kind of it's got to be like a male only kind of world, or is it more egalitarian? Should it be more
I
egalitarian?
think in practice, I think in theory it should have worked. In practice, it didn't.
Mhm.
Women coming in male spaces, it could have worked, but it didn't. Like I said, it's very similar to
Yeah.
the video gaming industry, for example. Like the reason there's a lot of men like video games or have interest in video games more than women. Even though I'm sure a lot of women do have interest in video games, but
Right.
it's just way more males. So it makes no sense that a lot of more males would, and they would talk to other men and they would have a community and all that. Um, and back then, those guys were viewed as losers. Back then, like you would be viewed as a loser. Like you're this stereotype about a man in his parents' basement just playing a video game behind a computer screen was always a thing. But now we see that now that they're with Twitch and all these other platforms, now you have tournaments, you have actual video game tournaments, you have actual you actually can get money if you're a big streamer and all that. You actually have this big community where men can just hang out and talk to each other fine. And women wanted to be a lot of women wanted to be a part of that community, and that's fine. But you have to play by the rules that someone else set. You don't come into someone else's house and try to tell them that they need to change the rules of their house. Like that doesn't make sense. But that's how women introduce themselves into the gaming industry. They introduce themselves by saying that it's sexist, that it's not enough female gamers, and then saying that the female gaming and that by having all these sexually provocative female gaming characters that it puts its women are off put, or that the reason they don't join is because men or say mean things to them online. It's just like it's just like that's not a good way to get yourself into the scenario.
Exactly. So I think we're going to wrap this up for now, actually. So, do you have any kind of final thoughts that stand out in your head right now that you want to kind of like share with the audience?
Um, I would just I would just say for when people ask me what do you do, I would say live life, live every day as if it's your last. Kind of.
Yeah.
If you think that activism is something you want to do, I would say that you only live once. So make try to do that. As soon as you can when you're inspired. I don't
Sure.
not to have I don't want you to have this belief of like, oh, what could have been.
Right.
You find out years later like, oh, this was a big issue, but you didn't you didn't fight, but you didn't fight for it when it was time. You know,
Right. Okay. Well, thanks so much for joining me here,
of course.
XM. So, is the way to contact you pretty much the same? And just reach you through the Humanity blog.
Yeah, and I have a Gmail if you guys need that.
Well, I don't know if I'd give out your
Okay,
email or
just
anything like that, but
right.
um, but right now they can contact you in the Whova platform, really, if they wanted to.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
you.
yeah. So I think that's the best place to reach X-Men from this point, I think. So
Absolutely.
yeah, sure, yeah. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to chat during this conference. So have a good night, and I hope everybody enjoyed our talk.
Yeah, and make sure you send me those articles.
Oh, I will. I will. All right. Okay. All right. Talk to you later.
Thank you.